Well, hello everyone and welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you actually live today. So, we are back in the saddle after a little bit of a live break. We've been running some replays, our most popular replays, but I'm super excited to be back with you live. And so, I want to say hello and welcome you all to the show today. I'm Lesli Bitel. And if you are an integrative health professional in private practice, I just want to say you are in for a special treat, especially if you are looking for strategies to help you to crack the code on speaking, especially around, improving your speaking skills and really creating that amazing experience with your audience quickly. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Very much looking forward to chatting with my friend and our colleague, Sonja Stetzler. Did I say your last name?
It's Stetzler.
Close. So anyway, I'm just delighted to have you, Sonja. It's kind of a long time coming, right? Like we were just saying before we hit that live button, I can't believe we haven't done this together yet because Sonja is such a wealth of information and you're in for a special treat. So today we're chatting with Sonja from Effective Connecting. And she is going to be sharing the secrets to creating an immersive experience with your clients and or your audience. So again, welcome everyone. Welcome, Sonja. Really excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Lesli. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So for those of you that are just jumping in, I want to welcome you. Welcome to the Live with Lesli show. And I'm Lesli Bitel, practice growth expert and mentor specifically for health professionals in private practice. And what I do is I help my clients to attract more right fit clients into their world, sell more programs, and ultimately grow a profitable private practice. So let's go ahead and jump in with Sonja. So instead of me reading your bio, Sonja, I'm going to just kind of ask you to give us your backstory and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up doing this work, especially as an RD. It's really interesting.
Yes. So, gosh, it's been a couple of decades ago. I started my career as a dietitian, and I wasn't really interested in clinical work. And I found that, I had big dreams, big, audacious things I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
So I went into management, but a little bit of the backstory before that, which really planted the seed for what I do now. It was the last semester of my internship, and I was in the food service management rotation. And I discovered I really liked teaching. To me, that was so much fun. The audience interaction, I really enjoyed that. So I was given a last project by the food service director to deliver an in-service. Yay, my sweet spot. And then he gave me the topic, personal hygiene. My stomach dropped. How was I going to pull this one off? And it was a very sensitive topic, right? And most of the people in the kitchen, there were about 60 employees. Most of them were old enough to be my mother. I mean, some were old enough to be my grandparents. So how was I going to pull this off? I didn't sleep for days. And then finally, an idea hit me. So I went down to a uniform shop that was a couple of blocks away from the hospital, and I talked the manager into letting me borrow 5 new uniforms. I rounded up about 5 of my informal leaders in the kitchen, and I produced the first annual food service fashion show. And the employees were able to walk up the aisle, and I was able to talk about personal hygiene and the context of food safety. And the employees loved it. They buzzed about it for days. The message was really sticky, but the employees had such a wonderful time doing it, and I did too. And after a couple of days, the food service director called me into the office, and you know what it is to be called into the boss's office. I was so worried that something was going to be amiss, and I did something that he disapproved of. But no, he congratulated me because the buzz was still going on in the kitchen. And he planted the seed and said that, I should keep public speaking as part of my career path. Well, I took that nugget and stuck it in the back of my head and really didn't do anything with it after I graduated till, well, the second hospital I worked with, I became part of the hospital speakers bureau. But when I landed my role in sales about 6 years after I graduated, I was delivering presentations daily, if not several times a day. And that's where I learned to hone my skills. And that really set the path for me to continue in that line of work. I had no idea there was such a profession as professional speaking. Who knew? So eventually, I landed roles in training as a quality assurance specialist, still within the food industry, actually expanded into the hospitality industry. That allowed me to go back to school to get my master's in organizational communications, which is really essentially they sold it as an MBA without the financials. Yay, me. I do words. I don't like numbers so much.
Yeah, that part is not fun.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and from there, the school offered an executive coaching certificate through the MBA program, and I thought, well, what's another, 3 courses? So I became an executive coach, and I launched my business, Effective Connecting, because in my work, really, it's essential that you're able to build trust with your audience, no
Mm.
matter if it's an audience of one or an audience of many, and that the communication piece is really the driver. How do we develop trust? How do we develop that rapport, whether it's an audience of one or audience of many? So I've been doing this work for since 2011.
Okay.
Mhm,
Amazing. That's such an interesting path for a registered dietitian.
mhm,
And who do you work with specifically now?
mhm. My clients are mid to senior level. I've worked with a couple of CEOs really around developing these communication skills. I work with teams.
Mm.
Um, I've worked with leaders who need to deliver to their audiences. For a couple of examples here, I've worked with a CEO. He needed to be comfortable in front of the camera. He was German, so in order to get comfortable in front of a camera, especially in front of an American audience, to tell the story of the product, the launch. We needed to incorporate story. We needed to reduce the anxiety that he had about getting in front of the camera. So that was one story. I had another experience. I was hired as the speaker coach in the materials handling industry, and they do an executive summit every year. I worked with these executives to do a TED style talk. Now, it
Hmm.
wasn't a TED talk, it wasn't a TEDx, but it was a TED style, meaning that their message needed to be wrapped in a story.
Okay.
So I worked with an executive from Deloitte. He had a great story, great background of where he came from, and that applied to the work that he did up in that point. It was a last mile delivery. And he was so nervous about getting in front of that crowd. And so we crafted his content, and it really came down to his practice, the practice of
Mm.
how he delivered. And the day before, actually, he was so nervous about even the rehearsal part that he couldn't get through his presentation. And I was thinking, oh no, I'll never be hired again. So that evening, instead of going to the speaker's dinner, he decided he was going to spend his time in the rehearsal. So the next day, it was his turn to get up, and I could see he was wiping his brow. And I was so nervous. I was thinking, come on, please, please, pull this off, pull this off. And he did. It was amazing. And his speaker score was actually higher than the
Mm.
speaker they had brought in and paid 10 grand to and read his presentation. I mean, that was just like, oh. So, yes, after my client had delivered his presentation, the meeting planner who knew his story came up and gave me a hug. I was like, don't hug me, hug Thomas because he's the one that saved the day. Um, so those are just some of the examples of people
Right.
that I've worked with.
Yeah, so interesting. Well, as you know, our audience today mostly is comprised of healthcare practitioners, right? Some coaches, naturopathic docs, registered dietitians, chiropractors, MDs, and the like. And so I am curious, in your opinion, why is speaking so critical?
Hmm. There are several different areas, and I call this the 4 L's of speaking. The first is leadership.
Mm,
When you get on a stage and you speak, you are seen as a leader. You are seen as the expert. So it's the perception of your audience that they have of you that, oh, this is somebody who knows something that I want to learn or I want to know about. So it puts you in a higher level. You know something. You're an expert. You're a thought leader. So that's the first L if you're looking to advance or promote yourself. The second is what I call leverage. Now, having been in sales for many years, the one-to-one when I went into someone's office, uh, that was a lot of time. So if I could speak to a group versus a one-to-one, I'm leveraging my
mm,
time. So it makes me more efficient with how I use my time. I could send out my message to many. Thirdly, it's a likability factor. We know in marketing, we take people through a funnel, the know, like, and trust you funnel. So having an audience, I move people through that tunnel a lot faster. It gets people to know who I am. It gets people to evaluate, oh, do I like her? Hmm. And it gives them a taste of what it might be like to work with me.
mhm.
Do I trust her? And this is something that speaking, if you do it well, people will trust you. And that opens it up to a discovery call to give them another spoonful of what it might be like to work with you. Lastly, and not many people realize this, but it's what I call links. So, what are links? That is the opportunity for people in the audience to connect with one another. We as humans are hardwired to connect with other people. And when you provide that opportunity for people who are similar, they've come to hear you speak because they are interested in your topic or they want to know more about you. And when you give them an opportunity to work with each other and to network, you are providing that opportunity. And that is seen as value because our ability to be social is really critical to building trust.
Mm, love that. So the 4 L's,
Hmm.
all of
Yes.
which I can relate to and teach, right? I gotta just say that, and anyone listening that's worked with me or interacted with me on any level, uh, probably what Sonja is describing is resonating in terms. I mean, it really, bottom line is, it is one of the best strategies to get out there and book clients and to grow your following and your audience for all the reasons that you described in that 4L format. So important. Now, as you're probably well aware, based on the stories that you've shared, sometimes it's really scary, right?
Hmm.
That's what I hear quite often is, I don't want to get on video. I'm worried about how I look, especially in this online world, right? Like what we're doing today. Um, and there's a lot of, I guess, tension around getting these talks booked and set up. Do you have any recommendations on, just how to overcome some of these, I guess, more internal obstacles?
Hmm. Some of it's mindset.
Mhm.
So I do work with a lot of my clients on what we call speech anxiety. Actually, speaking itself is anxiety provoking because if you're in front of an audience, and this goes back to our hardwired biology, it's me, and even though it's just me and you, I don't see our audience. The thought is, oh, could be hundreds of people out in the audience. That makes me vulnerable.
Mhm.
So when that plays in my mind, my amygdala immediately sends a signal to the rest of my brain, oh, Sonja's in danger. And the neurochemicals flood my system. And now I've got a system full of cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And the physical manifestation of that often is, people shake. Perhaps there's butterflies in the stomach. People sweat in places that they normally don't sweat. For me, I have to wear socks, especially in the hybrid situation, because my feet sweat a lot.
Interesting.
So how do we manage that? And one of the first techniques that I use with my clients is the deep breathing.
Okay.
One of the exercises that I love, I do improv as well. And one of my fellow improvisers taught me how to do the trace your hand exercise. And what you do is you raise your non-dominant hand. I'm going to cover my face here for a moment here. And you take your dominant hand and then you trace. You breathe in deeply like a belly breath, up one finger, and then breathe out as you go down. Breathe in, out. And you don't do it this fast. You do it really slowly, the
Okay.
deep belly breaths. By the time you get to your fifth finger, you've got 5 structured deep breaths. And if that's not enough, I tell my clients, go the other way, reverse it. You get 5 more. So what that does is the exhale actually connects with your nervous system and gives you that sense of calm. Also, this is a physical activity. It's not like you're doing a behind the curtain jumping jacks, Tony Robbins kind of warm up, but it is physical in that your finger is moving, you're watching it, it provides a focus.
Something other than being nervous,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So it acts as somewhat of a distraction too.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to welcome Amanda. Hey, Amanda. So
Mm-hmm.
Amanda says, I dread being in front of an audience. The fear of being judged is very real. But
Mm-hmm.
if I take a deep breath and just get started, I do just fine. It's a cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's part of the fear of being judged. What are they thinking of me?
Mhm.
So, what this is all your self consciousness, right? So, the second step, actually, that's a nice segue into my second step after the deep breathing, is the mindset shift.
Mhm.
So, when you shift your mindset, this is not about you. Speaking is never about you.
Mm.
Speaking is about your audience. So, if you can come at it with an attitude or a mindset shift that you're in service of your audience.
Mm.
Because honestly, your audience isn't thinking about you in the way that you think they're thinking about you. They're here to listen to you because you've got something of value that you're going to share. So if you focus on serving your audience, it reduces that self consciousness, which then reduces your anxiety. So let me put it to you maybe using an analogy.
Okay.
Let's suppose that you were invited to a dinner party. You knew no one there except for the host. For many people, that's very anxiety provoking. I don't know anyone. Oh no. However, the doorbell rings. Oh, the host is busy. You get the door for the host. You take their coat. You show them where the drinks are, where the buffet is going to be placed. What happens when you do that? You're in service of the guest. You
Mm.
play the role of co-host. Now you feel empowered to make other people feel comfortable. You forget about your self-consciousness. So
Love
for
that.
that analogy has worked for a lot of my clients. They think, "Oh, I get it. I'm in service of them."
Taking
Huh?
the focus off of oneself. And
Mhm.
instead, I love that. That's so powerful. Really thinking about how it's not about us,
Mhm.
it's about them, right? And how we
Mhm.
really step up and be of service.
Absolutely. How are you fulfilling their wants, their needs? I work with a lot of leaders who are needing to deliver to senior leadership in
Mhm.
their organizations. So the question becomes, so what do they need? Because oftentimes their presentations are focused on them and what they need. No, 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 no. What does your executive need?
Mhm.
You're giving them information so that they can make a better informed decision. So how are you serving them with your content?
Mhm.
And for many, that shifts the presentation. Now, there is a third step in this.
Okay.
And the third is the rehearsal. And I work with so many clients, we work out the content, great. And then I get a lot of reschedules when it comes to when we do the rehearsal part.
Mm. Why is that?
People don't, yeah, people don't like to rehearse. I mean, I admit it. Okay, I don't like to rehearse either.
Mhm.
However, if I had a nickel for every person that had come back to me and said, wow, I never realized the value of rehearsal,
Yeah.
I'd make bank. There's no question. So the rehearsal does a couple of things. Number one, and I was trained by 2 actors, advanced
Mm.
training. So when you sit down the first time to rehearse your presentation, we do what we call a table read. And a table read is nothing more than just talking through your script. And you're deciding, does this sound like me?
Mhm.
Now, I've been in academia. I was an adjunct professor for 10 years. And so sometimes my writing can get a little bit maybe highbrow because academics, the first time I wrote an academic paper, I wrote it too casually. And the person who was mentoring me said, Sonja, no, you can do that. And I'm like, this would never fly in a magazine article or a book. And she goes, you're not writing for that
So
audience.
different, right? I think
Yes.
a lot of people in our audience can relate to that
Mhm.
example, right? It's really kind of hard to discern those two different types of talks.
Yes. So we talk more informally than we write. We write more formally than we talk. So as I'm reading it out loud, I'm asking myself, Don, does this sound like me? What has to be changed? How does it sound? How can I make this sound more conversational? And the next time after I've made those edits, I get on my feet. I'm
Okay.
sitting today. Oftentimes I'll be standing because I have a standing desk on the other side of my room, and I will practice as if I'm doing a virtual presentation. If I'm doing an in-person, I'll go to my den because that's a big space
Mhm.
and that's my stage. I have my family photos on the back wall. That's my audience. So I'll rehearse. You're doing a couple things when you're rehearsing, and so many people don't rehearse out loud. Never do that. Rehearse out loud. There's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, you're starting with the memory process.
Mhm.
And the more you practice out loud, the more this information is going to be embedded in your brain. So you're coming from a place of knowing. And when you come from a place of knowing, guess what? If you're on stage and for real and the lights go out or the technology blows out, guess what? The show must go on. You can pick up. You don't need your slides. You must continue. That's really impressive for an audience. The next reason, and most people don't know this, and I've worked with several voice coaches, is that when you are rehearsing, you're actually out loud, that is, you're actually working with the muscle memory in your facial muscles.
Hmm.
Now, let's suppose that you learned to ride a bicycle when you were 5 years old,
Okay.
but you didn't ride it again until you were 20. Would you still know how to ride that bike? Yeah, you would.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You might be a little bit rusty,
Yeah.
getting your balance, maybe those first couple of turns on the crank with your feet, but it would all come back to you. Why? Because all of that muscle, that action is stored in your muscle memory.
Mhm.
So it's not like the words are going to be embedded forever. However, you're giving yourself a head start because when you've rehearsed it out loud several times, a lot of that is embedded in your muscle memory, and the words are going to come out more like the way you want them. That also boosts your
So
confidence.
important. Like I have found that I didn't know the background. I didn't know the why exactly, but I do know for sure with myself, I need to articulate the words, right?
Mhm,
Instead of
mhm,
kind of like in my mind, like if I'm being kind of, I don't know, I don't know if lazy is the right word, but just reading what I'm going to say, like that just isn't enough. It is not good enough. So
mhm,
I have definitely learned over time that I got to say the words
mhm.
and
Yes.
just got to get through it, say the words, use the language. And it just is so helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And when you come from a place of knowing,
Hmm.
that enables you to engage more with your audience.
Hmm.
And again, like I said, it allows you to be more improvisational.
Absolutely. Fascinating.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the concept of an immersive experience. Okay,
Mhm.
so because I know this is really important, can you define that first of all for
Mhm.
our audience?
Yes, and this is fairly new science
Okay,
that has come from a researcher named Paul Zak. He has a center for neuroscience in California.
right.
And what he was discovered, so if you think about an immersive experience that you've had, it's an extraordinary experience. It has several components of it. Number one, it's unexpected. You
Mhm.
weren't expecting this. It's got an emotional component to it. So it's emotionally charged and it so narrowly focuses you that you aren't tempted to pick up your phone or get distracted because you're so involved in what's going on in the experience itself. Because it's got an emotional component to it, it's easily remembered and it promotes or provokes an action.
Okay.
So, when this comes to speaking, stories are actually one of the best ways to promote this or to involve someone because when you're listening to a story, and especially someone who can tell a really good story, stories connect us emotionally.
Mhm.
So, we're involved. When somebody's telling the story and they tell it well, we're not apt to pick up our phone or get distracted by our environment.
Mhm.
Um, so those are the qualities. You've got to package them all together. One component isn't going to make that immersive experience. But when you package those components together, boy, that creates an experience that actually enables an audience member, whether it's an audience of one or an audience of many, to release oxytocin.
Mm-mm.
And we know that oxytocin is a trust building hormone. So, this is why, as I'm putting the pieces of the puzzle together that enable us to have this experience of, wow, that's really cool. Um, I think of an example of this. There was a commercial on, gosh, now the memory part is kind of fading. However, it was during Christmas,
Mhm.
and it was of a woman, and she was at her grandmother's home. Her grandmother looked like she had probably dementia, and the grandmother was staring
Mm.
into space. And so the girl takes her grandmother for a ride in the car. Oh no, it was Chevrolet. This was it, Chevrolet. So, and the girl drives the grandmother, pointing out, this is your high school that you went to. This
Mhm.
is where you met grandpa. This is where, all of these different sites. And you could see the grandma coming back. And at the end, she was smiling and they were having a conversation.
Mhm.
That commercial drew me in. And I was so intense and I was enjoying it so much that I could watch that over and over. But for me, that was an immersive experience. It touched all of those points. It was unexpected. It was emotionally charged. It was so focused on the story. that I didn't want to turn away and go to the kitchen and grab something to eat.
Advertising a car.
Yes, yes. And
Which
it provoked an
interesting.
yes. And it promoted an action. It promoted for me, it was like, wow, you know what? I'd love to have that experience with another person.
Uh-huh.
So does that help to
It
define?
does. It does. I would venture to say that many people in our audience, okay, I'm just going to kind of guess here. I'd love to hear from our audience if this is true for you. My guess is that many of us feel like we don't have any good stories. Who can relate? Who can relate? Like, oh, my stories are, kind of too boring to share, or, you know, uh, um, some thoughts along those lines. So what would you say? Okay, Amanda says yes. Okay. Yeah. How do you overcome that concern around, oh, it's too boring. My life's too boring. I don't have any good stories.
Mm, no.
You
You
just
know, it's
answer it.
yes, yes. What's really fascinating is that the stories, it doesn't have to be something really big or, the car crash or the
Right,
plane crash. No, no, because most of us haven't had that experience. We can't relate to that.
right.
The stories that relate to are the mundane, everyday things that happen to us. That's what's relatable.
Okay.
Um, I follow this really, really exceptionally storyteller. He won the Moth like 11 out of 12 times. You know what the Moth is, right? The storytelling contest.
Mm-mm.
It's really incredible.
Okay.
So Matthew Dix is his name. So there are a couple of components that make a story really come alive. And my suggestion, and I do this too, and I'm not 100%. However, um, I'll pick it up and do it for a long stretch at a time,
Mhm.
is I have an Excel spreadsheet.
Mm.
And at the end of every day, I write down, okay, so what were the
Mm.
story worthy moments? And I only have to write about 2 or 3 sentences because I'm not going to remember.
Mhm.
When I see the 2 or 3 sentences that I've written, it's going to jog a memory for me, and then I'm going to like, oh yeah, I remember that. So a couple of things to help draw people into a story
Mm.
is number one, if we can tell it in the present moment.
Okay.
When we tell it in the with the present tense, you're drawing people in the situation with you.
Mhm.
And so, there I was on the train. Here I am, going on the train to in Spain.
Right.
You're pulled into that car, that train car with me.
Okay.
So you want to give, people a little bit of exposition about what's going on. But what makes the story interesting is there's conflict.
Mm.
There's conflict. If you think of any movie that you've ever seen, you've got the first couple of scenes where they set things up and then something happens, there's a conflict.
Mhm.
The main character has to make a decision.
Mhm.
What's that going to be? And so you can have a resolution. Okay, this is how it was resolved. And that resolution should produce that 5-second aha moment. Oh, this is what I learned, or this is how this gets resolved.
Interesting.
But that also can promote more action, more conflict. And you got another resolution that you have to come to. So, but those are the main components. You've got the exposition, the action, the resolution, and within that, bring people in the present tense, and the resolution should always be that 5-second aha.
Okay. Interesting. Well, one of the things that I talk to my clients about quite often is creating what I like to call your brand story, right?
Mhm.
And and I guess the way that I would describe that, like the different components of the brand story. I mean, a lot of times as practitioners, we're doing this work because we have gone through the same challenge and journey that we're now helping our clients through, right?
Mhm.
And that's not always the case. Like I don't want to say 100%, but quite often that is the case. So I always kind of describe like putting these different elements together by like first giving people kind of a snapshot of what things were like before you crack the code, kind of
Mhm.
the struggle, right?
Mhm.
What did that struggle look like before you were able to achieve that resolution? And then what was maybe the turning point? Like sometimes we can think of a day where it's like, okay, I realize everything has to shift, right? I need to
Mhm.
make some changes, some kind of a trigger or turning point in the story. And then a little bit
Yes.
about what you did, right? To solve
Mhm.
it. And then I guess the third part would be what are things like now,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
What are things
Mhm.
like now that you've achieved resolution? So,
Mhm.
somewhat similar to what you're describing. But I
Mhm.
would say like the brand story is definitely something that probably just from a, marketing standpoint, like everybody should, be able
Mhm.
to articulate that one.
Mhm. Yes, yes, absolutely. And it sounds like it has the same components,
Yeah.
just framed in a little bit different way. Yes, yes.
Exactly. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So that's a, kind of an important one just, from a marketing's perspective, and it is a story that everyone here in our audience, you can share that from the stage, when you're introducing yourself or, you can share pieces of it just to make that, connection, and it really serves to, make you a real person.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
Instead
Yes.
of, as practitioners and, again, I don't wanna say 100%, but we can be viewed as kinda on the ivory tower, like, "Oh, she's never struggled, she's" you know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
And most of the time we have,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, oh, yes, absolutely.
Just more vulnerable.
Mhm. Right, and being vulnerable makes you more relatable.
It does.
Absolutely, and people value relationships. So, yeah, they wanna know that you've been through it as well. Yeah, well, people look at my story, they're like, "Wow, how did you get so successful?" And let me tell you, this has been a 10-year journey.
Yeah, I'll
And
bet.
there's been a lot of ups and downs along the way. I mean, it didn't happen. I didn't just get on stage overnight. It just happened to, I worked at it. And uh, through my network, if I hadn't sat next to a woman at a well-being conference that I attended, I would
Mhm.
have never been. She referred me to the executive producer at the executive summits. Um,
Okay.
that's how that happened. Just striking up a conversation. As I mentioned before, people in audiences want to be able to relate to other people in the audience. They want to be able to build those connections. So you never know where that's going to lead. Um, so it's been a journey over time that one day, and this happened, in December, I was like, wow, you know what? I've had all of these requests come in from my website. Um, how did that happen? And it's like, Sonja, it's been building over the years. It's not something that just happened overnight. It's now everything has come to a point where people know enough about you. You've been around long enough. You've built this.
Yeah, and one point that I wanna highlight, based on what you just shared, Sonia, is getting out there, right? Just
Mhm,
getting out there, mingling in
mhm,
person with
mhm,
other human beings, because
mhm,
nowadays it is so easy just to sit behind our computers, right?
mhm,
I would just, I think one of the takeaways is just get out there, right? You just don't know who you're gonna meet and what doors are gonna open as a result. So,
mhm,
like, you came across that woman in the audience and look how everything shifted for you.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that um, I think as a conversational intelligence coach too that
Mm.
we can hone in on is our ability to listen
Mm.
and listen well. Um, when I create an experience, and the other piece to this, I think that's really important, and especially as a speaker, it's not so much focusing on, yes, I focus on what the audience needs are, but I also am thinking of how can I create an experience for my audience?
Hmm.
What kind of experience am I creating for them?
Okay.
Does it have these elements of the unexpected? Does it have this emotional resonance, through a story or a couple of stories that I tell? Um, Oftentimes, when I'm teaching communication skills, and because I'm an improviser, I've been doing improv for the past 8 years, I'll enable or set it up so that my audience gets involved doing an improv exercise or activity or game. That enables them to connect with other people in the audience. And we always do a debrief. So, okay, what was the aha? And not only do they have their own aha, but they also learn from the people around them because someone else's aha, they might have had the same aha, but they weren't aware of it. So they learn from other audience members as well.
Okay. So, are you saying you try to inject a degree of audience interaction to your talk?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And it could be something simple. It could be, a finger in the air where I'm telling them to draw a clock. So if you draw a clock on the ceiling and then you bring your finger down to eye level, oh, now my finger's going counterclockwise. I started clockwise up on the ceiling.
Uh-huh.
So what was that about? And so the answer is, for those of you who might want to be trying this, yeah, circle, do a finger clockwise on the ceiling, and then bring your finger down and notice that it goes counterclockwise. Oh, that's a shift in perspective. So I've engaged them singly, and now they have this aha. Oh, so we're going to be talking about a perspective shift today. I've gotten them engaged, and I'm also creating these experiences that narrow their focus. They can't pick up their phones. It's easy to promote an action, so it helps to engage all of those components of immersion.
I love that. Really, really powerful. I just want to put Amanda's comment here
Mhm,
and just because this is a common question slash concern.
mhm.
So Amanda says, if we haven't found our own resolution, i.e., healing from autoimmune, but you have info to share with potential clients to help them avoid autoimmune or begin their healing journey, is it okay to say I solved X? Is that part, wait, if that part is in progress? So I would be curious to hear what Sonja has to say, but my perception is yes, right?
Mhm,
Like we're never saying you're done, right? Like
mhm,
a lot of these things are ongoing. I would
mhm.
say how like if you can encapsulate how the journey and the shift, like what kind of changes did that create for you? I think that might be helpful for your audience to be able to grasp, but I don't think we ever have to say it's done. I've solved it all, right? Sonia, what do you have to say about that?
Oh, totally agree with that. Yes, because we're still on the journey. However, my perception would be that you have made progress in your journey. And you can communicate that. Yes, I still have this autoimmune disease. However, I've been able to uh, improve my ability to do X, Y,
Yes.
and Z through, and I'm still working on this. So you're still on the journey, and uh, I kind of have a problem with the word expert, even though we might have more knowledge than someone else.
Mhm.
We're still steps ahead of the other person, and because we're all different, we all have different DNA. You know, we can help others based on our experience and knowledge as well. But we're still on the journey. We're all still on the journey.
Yeah.
Even as a communication, even though I'm sometimes considered a communication expert. I'm like, you know what? I'm still learning because there's still more research. There's more that's coming out that I don't know that I want to know. And I'm still a couple of steps ahead, so I can share with you what I've known so far.
I think that's a really great question, Amanda. And I'm glad you brought that up because it can, like, I think it is somewhat related to that idea of perfection, right? Like, do I have to be perfect before I can
Mhm.
teach them? No.
No,
Even if
no.
you're a step or two ahead of your audience, you're good, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's the key there. So really, really good question.
Right. And I would just add to that, I do not like the saying practice makes perfect because none of us are perfect.
No, I
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I say practice makes proficiency. That's what we're gaining. That's what we're looking for, proficiency, not perfection.
Mhm. Yeah, like, yeah, practice makes us better, more confident, more fluid, all those things. All right, good deal. So, my goodness, time flies, Sonja.
Wow.
Talk about this. Oh, such a great topic. The one thing I really want to encourage our audience is to take some action, and that would be look for speaking opportunities, right? Really get out there. I would highly recommend 2024. Let's have that be your year to get out and book speaking events because it really is a game changer, right? For your personal growth, for your confidence, and not to mention for your practice, right? Because of all the reasons we talked about.
Yes, and let me add to that, Leslie, because oftentimes I have professionals that I work with professionals who speak, not professional speakers. Let me make that clear. Even
Okay.
though I am a professional speaker, I like to work with professionals who speak. So oftentimes the question comes up, well, I want to get paid for speaking. Well, great, fantastic. You've got to start someplace. So let's say that you want to speak locally, yet you know that the organization can't afford
Mhm.
your speaking fee, or maybe you're offering this as a freebie in order to get clients. So, but you still want to leverage the opportunity. What can you leverage? Well, can they put a testimonial? Can you ask for a testimonial? Absolutely. Can you ask for a LinkedIn testimonial? Oh, absolutely. Can you ask? Can you offer for them to get on your mailing list to get something of a freebie? You know, an additional uh, piece of knowledge that you've put together outside of perhaps what you've given them at that event. Absolutely. So look at ways that you can leverage this opportunity to help you grow your business.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really, really powerful point because, yeah, I think that can stop people in their tracks. They're like, "Well, I don't wanna do I'm tired of doing things for free," right? Which I get. I
Mhm,
really do.
mhm,
Hey, if you can have your cake and eat it too, I say go for it, right?
mhm.
However, if there's not a budget there, and here's how I look at it, kind of piggybacking. Especially if you're getting in front of your target audience, that's your payback, right? Um, but again, if you can get both, be in front of your audience and get paid, like that's the best of both worlds, obviously.
Absolutely. I did a free event last year, and out of it, I got a referral worth more than the speaking fee. So that's don't discount that. You know, if you can a stage side lead, this is what we call it in the professional world. If you can gain a client from that speaking engagement, that is going to probably be worth at least, if not more, than the speaking fee that you could have charged.
Absolutely. So, yeah, love that. All right. Well, Sonia, I want to thank you so very much for joining the conversation today. And thanks to our audience for joining in. Such a great topic. And I know, before we forget, where can people go to learn more about your work?
Yes, you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I use.
Okay.
That's because that's where most of my clients are coming from. And if you're interested, I have some resources on my website, which is just my name, sonjastetzler.com.
Okay. I am gonna show that real quick. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. Yes, I think
Yep,
I did. All
you
right.
got it.
Yeah, so check out Sonja's website, check out those resources, and I'm gonna do the same myself because we're always learning, right?
Mhm.
And all right, guys, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up for the day. Thank you again for joining, and I will look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week. All right,
Great.
bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.